Jai Good morning. Can I turn my voice down a little bit in a moment? So basically, we spend our whole lives in dreamland, just gone all day, every day, day after day, nighttime too. And all these practices that we're talking about and all the talk that's going on here is only for one reason: to help us wake up from the dream that we're living in most of the time. So we add a practice, a procedure, some technical, spiritually technical thing to bring us back, something we can remember. And when we're doing it, the whole idea is to do it as best we can, which means give ourselves as much as we can to the practice at that time while we're doing it. The rest of the day, forget about it. Just be stupid. That's all we can do. But when we sit down to do our practices, we should really try to do that period as best we can. If it's 3 minutes, do it. Turn the phone off, set a timer so you don't sit for an extra second. You don't want to scare yourself. But do it. Really give that moment when you sit down, really give yourself to it as best you can. And that echoes of those minutes of practice will reverberate all day long within us. So this chanting that we're doing here, in India they call it repeating the name, remembering the names of God. That's what they call it. Okay, they gotta call it something, I guess. I don't know anything about God, but because of Maharaji, I do know what love is. I don't live there most of the time, but I do know what I had that hit. So I know that that's real, that exists, and that's where I want to live. So the chanting is what I do, the main practice I do, to bring myself back to that place, that experience of nowness, of being here in that love, in that presence, that I felt there then, which is still here now. And hopefully will be here tomorrow too, when it's tomorrow, because it'll be now, then. Right? So, but yeah, we have to, we didn't set the alarm clock when we fell asleep. This is the alarm clock. This retreat is an alarm clock. The practices, the talks here are all part of the alarm clock that we're setting to wake ourselves up. We're still in the process of setting it. We don't know exactly when to set it for yet, but we know, oh, that's an alarm clock. I think that's supposed to wake me up sometime. Yeah, what should I, oh, maybe I should set it. So, and it was only by Maharaji's insistence that I really got into chanting, because the Indian kirtanwalas who were at the temple all through the spring, summer, and rainy season, they sang Hare Krishna around the clock, from about 4 in the morning till about 10 at night, 11 at night, in shifts. It wasn't an endurance test. That's the way we do it. Yeah, I'm going to do 108 chalisas, and I'm not going to feel a thing. So towards the end of the season, one of those guys kind of tried to seduce one of the Western women who was with us. Of course, Maharaji found out about it. And in about 10 seconds, all 20 of these guys were loaded onto a truck and sent down to the train back home to Vrindavan. So one of the Indian people said, Baba, you just kicked out the kirtan wallas. Who's going to sing now? Yeah, the Westerners. Horrible. It was terrible. I mean, because really our practice was very simple. It was, we used to sit like this and go. That was our practice. To stare at him, like Parvati was saying, was it Parvati? Mira, or Sunanda, I don't remember. We could not, but we didn't want to blink. Because when you blink, even if it's a millisecond, you can't see him for that millisecond. A blinking was painful because we were seeing the whole universe shining and sparkling and alive, and everything you could imagine that's what we were seeing. Because each one of us has some probably unconscious idea of what it will be when and if it ever shows up. And that's what it was. We were seeing that right in front of our eyes. Each one of us saw their own version of that right there in him. So blinking was painful because it was a millionth of a second where you couldn't see that. That's how plugged in we were, like that. And so, okay, so we had to sing. So we had to sing in this room around the corner from the courtyard. So when he came out, we couldn't see him. We had to sing. And of course, we had only one instruction: sing. There was nothing about stopping or when we could stop. So of course, immediately we're thrust into eternal damnation. There must be some way out of here. It said the kirtan walla to the saint. There must be some confusion. And he said, no, there ain't. Just sing. So there we were, all day long singing. I can't describe to you how horrible it was. It's infinitely horrible. Because we didn't know anything. First of all, we didn't know how to play this harmonium. I just said, da, da. Most of the time we just sat there and go, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Ram. You know, so eventually we got into it a little bit more, started, all day long you're singing, and you can't stop, you're singing. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. How long is this going to go on? But even while you're thinking about it, you have to keep singing, which is interesting. So you start, trying to figure out things you could do while you're singing. That won't, you could maybe enjoy. So you start reliving your life, Oh yeah, I remember getting born. That was cool. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And on and on like that. And I remembered my old girlfriend back in America, Hare Krishna. Then I remembered she broke up with me, Hare Krishna. You have to keep singing, no stopping. So because we were forced to do that. So for instance, you're here singing, okay, it's going to be an hour or 2 hours. You can probably live through it. You don't have to really work at it. You just sit here and sing a little bit and float around, remember, and think about things. You're going to be free to go back to the TV very shortly, or the ocean, or the wind, or the whatever. But there was no escape for us, you understand? And I would try to escape. I would walk out and I would walk through the courtyard like as if I was going to the bathroom, but I'd be facing this way and walking towards Maharaji. And he'd go, down, okay, down. And I try it on the way back this way, down. Jiao means go. So eventually, something actually happened. Nobody was more surprised than me. Who knew? I didn't really expect this to work. I just thought it's something you have to do. He said, do it, we do it, okay, we do it. But little by little, over the days, and the women in the field picking potatoes and the vegetables, there was a microphone hanging from the ceiling that was left over from World War I. And it was broadcasting our howling to the whole valley. You could see the women picking potatoes going like, oh, God. But after like some days, some weeks, something began to happen. I'm not even going to tell you what it was, because then you'll look for it, and then of course it won't happen. But something will happen if you do your practice. These practices actually work. Because, you know why? Because we do them. The good news is, you have to, they will work. The bad news is, you have to do it, or nothing will happen. But they do work, they do work. And they work within each one of us in a completely different way. Really, the storyline, the content of the storyline might be different, but the release from the burden of being our small s, egomaniacal, self-serving, self-centered, self-worshipping small s self, the burden of that is lifted little by little. And it's amazing. Really extraordinary. When you recognize you're really not who you think you are. You just think you are. And when you think you are, you think you are. And that's all we do, is we think we are this, we think we are that, we feel we are this. But there's no relief from that, on that level of thinking. You cannot think yourself out of the prison made of thought. Every thought is the prison. I'll say it again, so you can think about it. You can't think yourself out of a prison made of thought. Every thought is the prison, because it catches us. We're stuck to it. We think we are what we think. And we believe everything we think. Oh my God, really, we do. That's the definition of insanity. Believing everything we think. You wake up in the morning, I feel like shit. We don't even ask ourselves, well, why do I think that? Maybe I don't feel like shit. Yes, you do. Okay. And then you go through the day like that. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves that we just believe automatically. We don't question them. There's no space in there. They just grab us. And there's no way to free ourselves on the very level that is. For instance, so when we start chanting, we don't know Ram, we don't know Krishna, we don't know any of that, who and what that might be. It doesn't matter. But we do the practice, and you notice that you haven't been paying attention for the last hour and 59 minutes. You got 1 minute left, oh wow, okay. So, and then you're back. And then you're back and you're paying attention again until the next time you notice that you're gone. You've been gone, right? That's how it works. And then you come back. That movement from the dream to waking up, from being gone to being here, every time you come back, the neural pathways in the brain are deepened. That motion, that action, that thing. It's easier, every time it becomes more natural as it goes on. And that motion, that movement, that release of the thought, or whatever we're lost in, that letting go happens through the day automatically by itself. And the very, very cool thing is that it actually happens by itself anyway. For instance, okay, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. 20 minutes later, oh, I haven't been paying attention. Even though you've been making noise and singing and the people around you have been singing, you've been dreaming about something. So how did that moment, when you recognize that you haven't been here, how did that moment happen? We didn't do that. We didn't do that. It happened. We were dreaming, and all of a sudden we noticed we were dreaming. That's a really big thing. So that moment is the result of the practice we've done in the past and the effort we've put in to come back, to remember to come back again and again. But you don't have to think about that. You just have to try to, when you're sing, really listen, hear, feel it. Whatever you have to do, move around, you can dance, you can do whatever you want to do, but the idea is pay attention, really be with the sound of the name that you're chanting. Maharaji said over and over again to us, repeating these names, through the repetition of these names, everything is accomplished. Hey, listen, I hate to tell you, but he didn't lie about stuff like that. He lied about a lot of stuff. Like, oh, I'm just going, I'll be back in 1 hour. 3 months later, you're still waiting. That he lied about, but this stuff he didn't lie about. Ram Nam Karna Se Sapura Vajate. From repeating these names, everything is made full and complete. It's a ripening process. A ripening process. It's not a learning process. You don't have to learn anything. You don't have to understand anything. We're not capable of understanding in our state of mind. For right now, understanding would mean thinking concepts about it. That's not real understanding. Real understanding is intuition from within. When the lights go on, oh, that's understanding. And that happens through practice. You just have to plant the seeds. You don't plant the seeds, nothing's going to grow. It's that simple. And every practice, even though they look different, essentially they are very similar. They're all created or given to us to help us out of our limits, our limitations, and to help us unidentify with all the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves that we don't like, most of the stories. But we can't stop doing it to ourselves. But yes, we can. So, in that room, singing like that, there was a shift that happened inside of me. And little by little, the sound of the name, of the mantra, kind of got, all of a sudden it felt more familiar. It started to feel like home. And in a sense, internally, I kind of like sat back into it. And the thoughts would come. Hello, goodbye, hello, goodbye. And I wasn't thinking them. They just flew through the sky like birds. And they didn't grab me. That's the first time. Well, it's the second time. I'll tell you about the first time. But the second, that's the first time it happened like that, naturally from within, without chemical assistance. So that happens through the familiarizing ourselves with the practice and deepening it by repetition. So really, if you just do 5 minutes a day, 3 minutes a day, really do it. And then get up and forget about it until the next time you sit down to do it. You'll see, things start to happen, like you'll start the name, you'll be driving around and all of a sudden you go, Shri Ram, hey, what is that? Where'd that come from? So it happens, it calls us, because really we think we're doing it. No, the name is repeating us, but that's a whole other ballgame. That's Kirtan 102, which I'm not qualified for. So, first time I had the experience of not being a thought was I was on 1,000 micrograms of Sandoz acid, LSD. And I was lying in my room and on my bed, just like, you know, and there was a window on the wall, far wall. And all as I'm lying there, like just totally blissed out, no mind, no nothing, just, and all of a sudden, something got my attention. It was like, what is that? What is that? It's like that Steve Martin routine. Yeah. You ever see that? It's so great. You know, that was this moment for me. And what's that? And it's getting closer and closer. I said, oh no, it's a thought. And then I was thinking. I'm thinking, hello, Mr. Das, how are you? Very good, thank you very much. And then, oh no, don't leave, And then after some period of time, thinking. So there was all this space, time between the thoughts. It was extraordinary. But they started coming faster and faster, and then I was just me again. What a bummer. So yeah, you know, nothing is required. You don't have to believe anything, you don't have to join anything, you don't have to wear any special clothes, you don't have to look any special way. But sooner or later, we will feel called to do some practice. Because there's no other way out of this. It's just unfortunate. We gotta do something. And it has to come. We have to use our personal will to do the practice. But the fruits of the practice do not come from our effort. It's a very unusual thing. But you have to do it. Leave it at that. That's the easy way to think about it. If you don't do it, nothing happens. If you do it, you might get lucky. You might not. So the practice that's best for you is the one that you do. Period. There's no obsessing about that. Should I do this mantra? What about that mantra? I really like Shiva. But Kali's kind of cool. No, she's so scary. I'll go back. Well, Vishnu says cool love. I think I'll forget about it. It does not matter. You don't even have to use a mantra. You can watch your breath, which is always there until you're not. So that's easy. Just keep coming back to the feeling of breathing. Some ability to pay some attention is very important. And usually we only pay attention when it's very painful or very pleasurable. In the middle, we're kind of gone. But it's the middle when we have to really be here. You don't have to. There's no requirement that says you have to. But, you know, don't read any Buddhist stuff. Stay away from that stuff, you know. It'll just make you, you know, it'll make you feel you better do something, which you better, but don't read it, it's okay. The fire sermon, you ever read the fire sermon? Oh monks, the eye is on fire with seeing. We don't think of it like that, but I've had experiences where my consciousness has gotten so quiet and open that I experience normal sensation, normal sense input as like being on fire. We don't experience that because we're burning all the time. We don't even know it. The eye is on fire with seeing, the ear is on fire with hearing, the skin on fire with touch, the tongue on fire with taste, and whatever else there is, it's on fire too. So, but we think this is the way it is. That's the way it always is. It's not, this is just our world, our narrow bandwidth that we share together, which allows us to communicate. But there's other bandwidths around this one that are less painful, so to speak. Okay, so I'll ask the questions and you can answer them. Who has the first answer? Raise your hand. I'll send the mic over there. Oh, don't get scared. You can make it sound like a question. Okay, somebody over here.
Okay. Cool.
Hello, KD.
Hello.
I have a...
Sit down.
Thank you. So I have a question that may sound very outfield, but you talking about the psychedelic just now, I'm like, oh, go ahead and ask it. Because I know that psychedelics, LSD, is a part of a lot of your stories, you and Ram Dass and others.
Others.
Others from your era, yeah.
My era.
Your era.
Definitely my era, yeah.
And I've been very touched by the Maharaji teaching. I know I'm paraphrasing here, that it brings you into the room with Christ, but you can't stay.
He said that.
Yeah, that
exactly
only,
like that. It's not a paraphrase.
That only love.
Quote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've been hearing...
Did everybody hear that? Maharaji, of course, when he said that LSD brings you into the room with Christ, but you can't stay. The only way to stay is love. And that won't come from the LSD. So if you want to stay, it's love which will keep you there. But the LSD will bring you there, but it wears off.
Right. So in my work, which I won't get into, but I get asked a lot of questions. Jamie, what do you think about psychedelics? And I've been hearing a lot about ayahuasca lately. At this retreat, I've heard a lot of people talk about ayahuasca. It's kind of the new thing with that experience.
It's new for us.
Yeah.
Probably a million years old.
Right. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts, feelings, opinions on that. If somebody kind of came to you and said, hey, Krishna Das, should I do ayahuasca with the shaman? Or what do you
usually
think?
they come to me, Krishna Das, you want to do some ayahuasca with the shaman?
Or what about psychedelics? Because didn't Maharaji also say it's good for beginners or something to that effect?
He did. He said it was. He told Raghu to take his father to Benares, which is the city of a lot of stuff, and give him acid there. And he did it, and it changed his life.
So my essential question is, with all these years of perspective, what would you say?
What years are you talking about?
You're an era.
I'm an era, definitely. I think so.
And I guess what would you say to a person who was your age when you went to India now? Like if a 21-year-old kid came up to you and said...
I remember when my mother, Maharaji called me over one day and said, when's your mother coming to India? I said, my mother? God forbid. So later that day I got a message from town, your mother called, she wants to talk to you. Really? Okay, so next day I went and I called my mother. She said, I want to come to India. I said to her, what if my daughter said this to me, I would lock her in a closet for the rest of her life. I said, I have to ask my guru. So I went back to Kenshin. I said, my mother wants to come to India. Good, let her come. Ah, shit. Yes, what were you saying?
Yeah, just your thoughts, feelings on the whole psychedelics issue?
Why are we talking about my mother?
I don't know. You tell me.
Can anybody tell me? I have none. Everybody's going to do what they're going to do. You can't tell people what to do. They don't listen, and you might not be right either. So there you go, you know. I'm finished with that stuff for this life. Maybe later. Up to now, I'm finished with that stuff. If I took acid now, I think my arms and legs would just fall off. You know? No. At one point, I realized that if I stopped shooting myself into the stratosphere and then crashing back down again and again, if I stopped doing that to myself, that the plateau of my consciousness will gradually rise. We'll see. It's only been 50 years. So I stopped it. I don't do it. And so I wouldn't tell anybody to do it or not to do it. I don't know what's right for anybody else. Unless they ask me. And I'll tell them what I think. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those things. I don't think I would be. It doesn't look like I would have made it. Because that first thing I took was peyote between my junior and senior years of high school. Oh, what a senior year it was. And, you know, I drove around in my car, almost drove into the lake once, you know, and I was just going like, right. I understood immediately that this was more real than Long Island, which is not saying a lot. But there was no doubt that what I was experiencing was more real than anything I had been involved with up to that point. It was great. Of course, it made me very depressed. The whole senior year was spent like trying to figure out how to get back to that place. So, but eventually, you know, and of course that's why Ram Dass brought the acid with him the first time. Because it had changed his life, but nobody could actually say what it is. What is this, right? And how does it do what it does? Right? So when Maharaji took the acid and nothing happened, he just went, oh well, this guy's beyond. And that was a really life-changing thing. Of course, there's a little part of the story that's not that well known, which is that when Ram Dass came back after his first visit, after Maharaji took the acid first time, he was telling people, and there were people who said, oh, come on, nobody could take that much acid. He must have thrown it over his shoulder or something. Yeah, he scammed you. So he didn't really believe that, but there was just a little bit of doubt in there, right? So then when he came to India the second time, we were traveling around, me, him, Ramesh, and two other guys. And we met Maharaji in Vrindavan. And we were sitting with him, and he looked around us and he said, did you give me medicine when you were in India last time? Yes. Oh. Did I take it? Right? I think so, yeah. Oh. You got any more? Yes. Give it to me. So he put his hand out like this, and I swear I was sitting right next to Ram Dass. Maharaji went like this. 3 or 4 times. He took enough acid to put a horse on the moon. So then, after a couple of minutes, he takes his blanket and he pulls it over his head like this, you know? And then he goes, opens it, he goes like, Ram Dass turned purple. And he thought, oh my God, he didn't take it the first time. But he knew I had doubts, so he wanted to prove he could do it. I've killed my guru, what have I done? You know? And the minute he thought that, Maharaji just dropped the whole game. He said, he said, yogis have known about this for thousands of years. Used to grow up in the Kulu Valley, no problema. He said, for a yogi who knows God, no poison can affect him. Interesting, huh? And we spent the rest of the day, no different. So that's, that's that. The real issue is, how can we see through, so to speak, the belief that we are separate from everything else in the universe? This little bubble of me, right? In this room, everybody here probably thinks that you're different from the person sitting next to you, right? Right? We do. And on one level, at the level of the body, the mind, the thoughts, emotions, that's looks like it's true. But the ultimate reality is not. It's not like that. Maharaji always said, all one. And so because of this feeling that we're separate and different from everybody else, we suffer. All our stuff orbits around this planet of me. And we don't know what to do with it. So through practice, every time you let go of a thought or a feeling or a memory or blah, 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 and you come back, you've just made that separateness a little bit more transparent. And gradually, but inevitably, that planet of me disappears, and then the ship just goes and flies around and kills somebody else. But that's practice. That's what happens. But it's not really complicated, If we could just treat other people the way we would like to be treated. Remember that guy, he said that, something like that? Do unto what? Others? Yeah. That's it, that's the whole deal right there. But we can't do that. Because we're attached to our separateness, our small s self, so to speak, and so we need stuff, and if other person's got it, we got to get it because we need it, right? It's as if love is in a limited quantity, a limited supply, and if somebody else has it, we don't have it. But it's not like that. So and Maharaji never encouraged us to do spiritual practice to save our own miserable asses. He never did. We asked him, how do we find God? Serve people. What? What is he talking about? We just weren't ready, We just were too young. We didn't get it. How do you raise Kundalini? He said, feed people. Excuse me. It was just beyond us. We couldn't get it in here. We got it here. We knew that this is it, but we didn't know how to be it yet. Don't think of yourself. He said, how do you not think of yourself? Practice. When I was going to kill myself, you know the story. I love to tell it over and over. I had no other stories to tell, so I was going to jump in the river, and which was 6 inches deep. But if I got my head under one of the rocks, I thought I could probably get the job done. So instead, he calls me. I went up there, and he said, "What are you going to do? Jump in the river?" Ha! You can't die. Worldly people don't die. Only Jesus died the real death. What is he talking about? He said, why? Why did he die the real death? Because he never thought of himself. He gave his life for his people. He became immortal, which is a translation thing. In other words, there was no me in there anymore. There was no personal agenda in that being anymore. An enlightened being does not have a personal agenda. They're only here to help us figure this shit out. So, anybody? Go. Okay. I don't know. Oh, hi.
Hi. Is this on? Okay. So you were speaking before about the thinking mind and then the knowing self or the intuitive wisdom, and I'm just wondering if you could talk about kind of the body and where the body comes into that, specifically like when we experience pain or disease. That in my mind, I have thoughts about the body in pain, and I can sort of recognize, oh, there's a thought. But then when the body's sending signals,
Yeah.
that's coming from a different place. And so, is that just your karma, that your karma is to work out what your body brings to you in this life, and that's that, or?
Well, yeah. Physical pain is really big time stuff. No question about it. I was sitting with Ram Dass the other day. And one day, the first day, we were sitting together, and he looked at me and said, "You have healing powers." And I just looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I have no pain today." Right? And a few days later, he looked at me and he said, "No, pain really grabs you, really grabs the attention." So I'm not really good with pain. You know, if I stub my toe in the morning, the next week is a drag. You know, I can't deal with it. I just can't deal with it. But I've been around some people who have dealt with a lot of, like what Sharon Salzberg talks about a lot, and Joseph Goldstein. They talk about the proliferation of thoughts, right? Like, I have a headache, you know, and I've had headaches like this before, and I don't know how long this one's gonna last, but even if it goes away, I know I'm gonna get another one. I just don't know what to do about this. I've been to the doctors, and I've gone on tests, I've had all the tests, you know. 3 days later, you're still going on in your head. So there's the pain, and then there's the button that pushes in our emotions and our stuff. So with practice, through practice, we get the strength when we start with simple stuff, like just now we were chanting. That's easy, when most of us are not in a lot of pain at the moment, so we can keep coming back. There's nothing really holding us away except our habits of thought, our habits of being gone. So we need to train ourselves and develop the strength to be able to let go. And so when you experience pain, you can notice the difference, you can notice the pain, you can notice the sensation, and then you can notice all the thoughts about it, which are very painful because they're like eternal damnation usually when you're in that state. Which, by the way, is not eternal, but it's a state of mind that feels eternal. So when you're in that, it's like there's no end to this, so that makes it so much worse, so much harder. But if one practices, and there's a lot of people who deal with this, you know, you can find out online, you can find places, their specialty is dealing with physical pain and stuff like that. And that they have a lot of practices that are incredibly useful. And it's not necessarily about removing the pain from the body, it's removing the person from the pain, in a way. Removing ourselves from, and great Saint Swami Nityananda, he said, oh, saints experience pain, but not the way you do. Because in a saint, there's no you, there's no me. So the pain is there, but there's no like, all the other stuff about it. Because the body's there. So, because they're not identified with the body, it's very different. So it's there's a place to start, which is, trying to find, if one has those issues, there are people who are really good at that, who really know how to help focus on the right things when we have that kind of pain. I don't really know that much about it. Is that okay? Hi.
Hi. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
I just saw you a few weeks ago in Encinitas, and I think I asked you a question then, so thank you for that last question, because that was going to be my question about fierce grace, and not just with Ram Dass, but with what's going on with society today, and even with our personal lives, dealing with adversity, challenges. But I just have to change my question to something a little bit more positive in that once one is quote unquote realized or gets it and feels this oneness, what are your thoughts about how one can best share that to the world? Obviously, bringing it to your family and to your work is one way, but I find that I want to share it in these grand scales, like, oh, I'm going to go to India and I'm going to feed all the poor people, or I'm going to invent something, fix the water, right? and I realize that's just going to make me crazy. But it's a great thought, but maybe I should fix my work situation first, right? Or maybe I should just leave my work. So my question is, what are your thoughts about how best once we get it, or think we get it, or have some taste of it, can share it to the world in the most effective and efficient and positive way, not just one-on-one, but in a community and in a one world way?
Well, you're asking me to share with you how I would change the world after I'm enlightened? Yeah, all I can do is see me in about 400 million lifetimes. And by the way, the fierce grace thing, I hope I'd like to tell you this because you maybe didn't hear this part of it. Yes, Ram Dass used to say that his stroke was fierce grace, that Maharaji stroked him, so to speak. But when he went to India and met Siddhima again after many years, she knew that he had been saying this. And she said to him, Ram Dass, that's not the way it is. Maharaji did not give you that stroke. The grace that he gave you was the strength to overcome the strokes, what the stroke did to you. The stroke was your karma. But the grace was the ability to overcome that and grow the way he has grown in the last 20 years. So that's a big thing. It's a big thing. So let's straighten that out, because we'd be doing ourselves a disservice. Beings like Maharaji. One time, Mr. Tiwari, my Indian father and my great teacher, and also a very close old devotee of Maharaji's, came to Maharaji and started berating him because one of his other old devotees was very ill and suffering terribly. And he said, how could you let this happen? You could change this. How could you do this? This is terrible. Why would you do this thing? And Maharaji said, oh, you think I don't know what he's feeling? You think I don't feel what he's feeling? Yes, I could change it. But if I change it, he'll have to come back again. I know just how much he can take. And I don't give him more than that. You can say something like that, right? It's very, 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 very deep. Yeah. So whatever you asked, I don't know what the answer is. Okay, good.
Hi.
We
I'm
agree
over
on
here.
that. Where are you? Where are you?
I'm over here. Over
Where?
here. To the right. To the right. To the right.
Right. Oh, you, oh my God. Okay.
Well, you said a while ago that we think we're saying the name of God, but the name of God is really saying us, and that you didn't feel that you could speak to that. But I love that so much, and I wondered if you could just take a stab at it.
Why she's who she is. Well, yeah, okay, I can take a stab. You know, one time I asked Siddhi Ma, I said, Ma, you know, should I meditate? You know, meditate? And she said, Krishnadas, in 40 years with Maharaji, not once did he ask me to meditate. He said, you know, do japa, repeat the names, but he never said meditate. And she said, Maharaji told her that you cannot precipitate the more subtle states of consciousness with your personal will, but that they will arise as you become ready or ripe for them. They'll arise naturally. It's like Ramana Maharshi saying, you know, asking the mind or the ego to kill the ego is like asking the policeman to be the thief to be the policeman. There'll be a lot of investigation, but no arrest will ever be made. The ego doesn't want to kill itself. And it's not even like that, but that's just the way we talk about it. So, we think we are who we think we are, and based on that misunderstanding, we do all kinds of stuff, like spiritual practice. And we think we're doing it. But that's just because we are locked in this particular bandwidth where we see things a certain way. Really, our soul, they say that longing is how a being experiences being pulled within into its own nature. We experience that as longing for something. But that's what we feel as we're being pulled into it. So, because we identify ourselves with our stuff and our stuff, we think we're either doing it or we're not doing it. But there's another level of being that where you see that the program is running, you know, and we are being done by our deeper self, our deeper reality. And some people would say, oh, Maharaji's doing everything. But who's Maharaji? Is he a guy like or whatever, like a person like us? No, he's not like that. He's the whole universe. He's your own true nature. There's a word, antaryami, which means the indwelling presence within. That the great beings live within us as our own true nature, not something else. They live within us as who we really are, because that's who they really are. So when you get into those deeper, less separate levels of separation, you see that it's happening from within. And, you know, it's like a fruit being ripened in the sun, thinking, wow, I'm really getting myself right, hey? You know, excuse me. You know, it's not quite like that, but it looks like that to the fruit. So on that level of relative reality, yeah, it looks like we're doing things, but relative reality, which means the way we see things, is held inside reality, ultimate reality. All our little stories, our storylines, the storylines of our lives, are held within this ultimate vast being, which we are all within. We can never be outside that. And as we practice releasing the thoughts, the emotions, like when we're doing the practice, we're releasing ourselves into pure being. They call it Chittakash is one way they talk about it, the sky of the mind, the sky of consciousness. They call all kinds of things. But it's like letting is being released from our versions, our subjective version of things. But from within that subjective version, we have to practice. Or nothing's going to happen, probably, unless you're really lucky. So, I think St. Paul said, by grace was I saved through faith. So, if we even are on this path, if we even have any sense that that we can do this, that there's something to do, a way to find our true being and find real love, that's already grace. That's the bigger picture. Wait a second, no, something. Okay, yeah.
Hi. I've been following you for about 2 years, and
That's you?
yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Now I know it's you. I'll invite you in for tea.
Sweet. I really want to thank you because through you, I feel Maharaji opened my heart, and it's been just an awesome process since then. For the first year and a half, I tried to learn the Chalisa by listening to your 4 a.m. Hanuman Chalisa and Prema Chalisa and different ones. And
By the way, there's the Hanuman Chalisa, okay? All these other names I had to make up because it's on a record or on a CD and you have to have a name for it. And you can't use the same name 300 times. It's like Springsteen saying, Thunder Road was the name of all his songs. It just doesn't work, you know, so I had the 4 a.m. Chalisa, the 5 a.m. Chalisa, the bathroom Chalisa. Those are the ones you haven't heard yet. The this Chalisa, the that Chalisa. It's all the Hanuman Chalisa, but you had to call it something. And now other people are starting to call these Chalisa, you know, I would, excuse me, do they even know why they're doing that? Never mind, go ahead.
okay, cool. So I was, for the first year and a half, I tried to listen to it and learn it by listening to you like 24/7. And it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't like I was trying to force myself to listen to you. It was just like naturally the desire to.
Did she just say that?
Like, I didn't sit here and go, okay, I gotta sit down and fucking learn the to listen out.
Yeah, I better listen to Krishna now. I'm pretty fucked up. I gotta do that now.
Yeah, this asshole.
Shit, I have to listen to him again.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
I understand.
It was really awesome.
You can tell me that over and over, but I don't believe it.
So, you know, I stopped watching sports and baseball, and it was really
Yeah.
fucking terrible because I love the Giants, you know? But in a lot of ways, it was really cool, too. You know? But anyway, that's a long different story.
Okay.
But so I was trying to learn it, and I couldn't really get it 100%. I have to always listen for your prompts in the background, like for the next line, you know? Even then, when I heard your first line of the first word of it, then I would be able to say the rest of the line. Well, then 6 months ago, I met this guy, John, friend of mine, at one of the retreats. And we worked on a project together, transliterating, kind of like, I think it was you and Ramesh with us who originally transliterated it the first time we became. So we did that together, and now, in the last 6 months, I've been able to say it from memory a few times.
So you transliterated the transliteration?
Well, we didn't really like yours too much. Didn't work for us. We love you though, but your transliteration kind of didn't work for us. Sucked. It didn't work for us.
I translated it for people on Long Island. They understand it perfectly.
He's from Canada and I'm from
Excuse me?
California, and so we didn't work with the Long Island cable version, so we did our own. You know what I'm saying? So then part two, and like an addendum to learning that was we did the 108 a couple days ago in Kihei. And it took us 18 hours, but we did it. And I just want to say that it was just a really amazing experience. I just want to thank you for saving my ass.
By what? Making a bad transliteration?
Yeah, because if it was a good transliteration, then I wouldn't have known what a good transliteration was when I did one on my own.
There's a very special hell world ready for you.
I'll save you a seat, brother.
Save me a seat.
And I also want to say that I've been trying to say something to you for 2 years, but I always get overcome with emotion. You know, like I clam up around you all the time.
Get over it.
I'm over it now.
Okay, good.
You know. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello?
You can't pay for that kind of stuff, you know?
I had a question as well, but now I'm kind of afraid to ask after that intro. I live in a small town in northern Ontario, Canada. There's no Kirtan there.
Neil Young lives in a small town in Ontario.
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
So when I'm chanting here with all you amazing souls, and you leading it, I'm in bliss. It's bliss. At home, when I'm chanting with you or alone, it's okay. It's not like this though. So being there's no kirtan at home, I wonder if I go to a church, not a churchgoer.
No. Go to the supermarket, sit down cross-legged in one of the aisles and start singing the Hanuman Chalisa. They will take you to a place where all the special souls are. And they might not let you out for a while, but that's okay. You'll be with your people.
If I were to go to a church, not being a church goer, and I sing from the hymn books with them, is that the same thing? Is that singing to God in that way? Is that the same as with that congregation? The same as singing to God, singing to Ram with this congregation, so to speak?
Well, it's not necessarily that different, for sure. But you bring up a good point. And that's the difference between conceptual devotion and love and non-conceptual love. Okay? Love with thoughts and emotions, and love without thoughts and emotions, for instance. So the difference between like a bhajan or a gospel song and a mantra is that the real meaning of the mantra is not conceptual. Like the real meaning of Ram is not some guy with a bow and arrow. It's the real meaning is your own true nature. But when you sing a song with concepts, like Indian bhajans, or very similar to gospel songs, that can give you tremendous loving feelings, and that can lubricate your heart in a certain kind of way, and can also purify the heart in a way, and turn you more towards the light in a way, but it's not the light itself. Whereas the mantra is actually the light itself, or so they say. Because they say the name and what is named are not different. That's a big thing to think about, a big concept. But they do say that, and they mean that, like Maharaj used to say, go on, sing your lying Ram Ram. You know, one of these days you'll say it right at once, bam, the real Ram will come and you'll be out of here. Something like that. When he understood that, we're just faking it. We don't know the real Ram, but we're working on it, right? But he said, do go on singing it, even though you don't know what you're singing. Because the real Ram is different than what we think and feel and imagine and blah, blah, blah. But those kind of devotional songs are extraordinary, and they really can open your heart and give you tremendous bliss and happiness. And that is a very positive experience, but it's not the thing itself. It's not bad by any means. Those gospel songs are phenomenal. I mean, I start to cry just thinking about it. But that's not the thing itself. The thing itself is essentially simpler than that, in a way, more present than that. It's our own true nature. It's being here now. It's us. So, but it's all part of the whole thing. Maharaji always had the Sundarkand, the chapter from the Ramayana, read out on Tuesdays. You know, it's a story about when Hanuman jumps across the ocean, and he would hear it and he'd read. You know, because he is Hanuman, so he could remember what it was like jumping across the ocean. But and in the villages before Western culture got there, all they did, they got together and they sang these bhajans. That was their entertainment, these devotional songs. You know. Jesus met the woman at the well. It gives you faith, it gives you confidence. And with that, you can go deeper. See, some people will go to church, and then they'll leave church, get in their limousines, and go kill people. So even though they were there and they did the stuff, it didn't purify their hearts. The real work has to come with the kind of compassion and kindness that gets generated by humility in front of the kind of suffering that we all have. And at some point you just can't do things that hurt other people consciously. I mean, a lot of times things that we do hurt other people. We didn't mean to do it to hurt. But anyway, so it's great. You know, that's what, if you're looking for satsang, just don't mention Ram and wear a different shirt, you know, and go and sing. And then go home and be your regular self. But that's great, no problem.
Thank you. So you joked at the beginning about how we have the answers and you have the questions. So I'm curious, what are the questions that you're struggling with these days?
Yeah, I want to become invisible. How can I do that? Where are you going? You can answer my question or not.
What type of invisibility are we talking about?
When I look out, I don't want to see me-ness. I want to see, I want to.
Why are you looking out?
That's what we do. That's what awareness does. It's aware. So I don't want awareness to be aware. I don't want my stuff to be between me and my true nature.
So I'm curious if there's a space where, rather than being in between, it's integrated. Is that a possibility?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Next answer. No, it's not on. Maybe the battery's gone. Okay.
Check one.
Yeah.
That was almost too quick. This is kind of a difficult question for me to ask, and it may be a little too personal, but when in my practice, like you just mentioned true nature, which triggered me to ask this question. In my practice, I struggle with having addictive I have an addictive personality, so it really doesn't matter what it is. It's sugar, it's gambling, different phases in my life throughout my life. And I understand that to be kind of cerebral in nature. That's my understanding of it. That it's
What's cerebral?
The addictive tendency, addictive personality is in my mind, right? And then you talk about true nature, your soul, right? And who your authentic self, not you, but Pete, I do my authentic self. And then within, I have kind of desires that maybe only 10 or 50% of the population have, that feel more, that they come from a more soulful place, like my real authentic self. And as I get in touch with those and lose the shame around that I've gotten rid of shame finally. I'm wondering, I'm trying to formulate the question so that you can really answer it, but what do you do with, as you move into your practice deeper and deeper, those desires, for me, still tend to be there. And I'm wondering do you have a thought or a comment about that? I mean, I don't want to ask if it's okay or it's not okay, because it's what it is, but kind of, what do I do with that, I guess? If you have any thoughts about that.
Well, really, I don't know, but I would pray. I would pray my ass off every day to be saved from my own destructive tendencies. Because by praying, you're opening up the possibility that you could be saved. And you're separating yourself in that moment from those tendencies themselves, right? But, prayer can take whatever form it is, but I would just beg the universe to save your ass, because you can't save yourself. We can't save ourselves. We are saved by grace. Grace is our true nature. We are saved when that manifests within us. But we are our negative tendencies as well as our positive tendencies. We are those. That makes up our smallest self. When I started, the story when I started singing with people. I started singing with people. I had an epiphany in my room. I was very, very depressed. It's been 21 years since Maharaji died, and I was sinking. I was a wreck. And I walked from one room to the other, and I was struck with very deep understanding that if I did not sing with people, I would never be able to clean out these dark corners in my own heart, with the full understanding that it was only those shadows that were causing me pain and suffering. So I started to sing with people. And after about maybe 6 months or so, I quit, because I saw, I saw y'all. I saw what was happening. I saw what was going to happen. I could feel, and I knew that I was a hungry guy. And when you're hungry, you eat food. And I was just going to gobble up all this energy that was coming to me for the sake of my own desires. And I couldn't bear that, because that's not why I started chanting. I started chanting so I could feel Maharaji's presence again. I had lost that. I had lost my connection from my point of view. He had never gone anywhere, but I just felt that I wasn't in it the way I wanted to be. And I knew that chanting was the thing that was going to help me. And there I was doing it, and I saw that it was like a setup, because all it was doing was giving me more stuff to drown myself in. And there was no possibility, none, that I would not use all this beautiful energy to feed my hungry desires and all my negativity, period. Because that's who I was. So I said, all right, I quit. And I started talking to him. I said, you have to change this. You'd only been dead 21 years. Figured he'd hear me. You have to change this. This is your problem. I'm singing to people in your name. You don't fix it, I don't sing, that's the deal. Good night. Right? I meant it. And the despair that I felt was almost unbearable. Because I was being prevented from doing the only thing that could save me by me. Where do you go? That's what I mean. Pray, beg, scream, do whatever you have to do. The universe will respond. You have to want it. You have to mean it. And you will. You do. You know what it's like. And you don't want to be that. So, and he did. He saved my ass. I didn't give him any choice. Right. You think you can manipulate the universe? Forget about it. But that could be your practice. Could be. I mean, that's the way it looks. And also, my mother was an alcoholic. I'm an addictive, very addictive personality. And if I had to struggle with those issues, I wouldn't be able to make it. There's no doubt in my mind I wouldn't have made it. But I wanted that love. And I want that love more than anything. I don't know why. But that's the bottom line. And that you'll get that if that's what you want.
Thank you.
I don't have the mic. Where is it? Somewhere?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm very nervous to talk in a microphone, but thank you so much for everything that you've been doing thus far. I have a question about your practice. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about any roadblocks you might have come along on your practice. You know, you do this every day and you are in different yoga studios and venues, and if there's ever a feeling like,
Always something.
you know, I just am curious, when something gets in the way, what have you found to keep going or renewing your passion or anything along that line?
You just keep singing. What else are you gonna do? You go, shit, and you keep singing. And when Arjun first started playing with me, you know, he was very upset that the sound on stage didn't sound, you know, like the room and this, and I just said, Arjun, it's always something. All right. Now, after like 12 years, he's all right, you know. But it's always something. But, you know, because I do this so often and with such intensity, when I sit down to sing, ain't much going on except singing. Yeah, something comes up. Like people ask me, like, what do you feel when you sing? I go like, how do I know? I'm singing. I'm not feeling. I mean, I am, but not that, you know. If something pulls me out of it, it's simply something to let go of and come back. I don't write down what it was and put a star next to it. Next time you show up, I'm gonna pop you on the head. No, you just let it go. And I come back. So I do that so much that this letting go muscle has gotten bigger than the regular muscles, which I keep atrophying at my age. And yeah. So whatever it is, the idea is when you're practicing, that's when you're training yourself. That's when you're teaching yourself how to release any roadblock, anything that comes up, any big emotion, any small emotion, any negativity, any positivity, anything that shows up that pulls you away from the practice, you let go, you come back. And over time, that ability to release that, it just boom, 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 you know? And then you sink more deeply into the practice itself. Is that anything close to what you're asking? Okay. So it's through the practice itself that everything becomes clear. Without a practice, we're like ships on the ocean with no anchor. Every wind, every wave just blows us which way, right? But the practice sinks an anchor down into that place within. And we go this way, and we hit that. You know, the chain pulls on the anchor, and we're back. And that chain gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until we're right here, 24/7, 365. Yeah?
Hello.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. What I wanted to speak into.
Oh, that's Bob, okay.
I've witnessed that my biggest awakenings have often, always, seem to follow times of very deep suffering for me. And so I'm realizing that through association, I'm now reinforcing the idea that in order to get to the light, I need to go to the doom and gloom.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible? I know that's definitely, like, it's anchored in duality, and I know, like, obviously if we're changing the lens to a non-dual framework, then that doesn't even apply, but...
I'll forget you just said that. Go back to the first part of it.
Okay.
Okay.
How can I change my association to bliss, or like coming back to my natural state of being in resonance with light and love, without needing to go down the road of suffering?
That's a story you're telling yourself based on certain things that have happened in your life.
I realize that.
You're interpreting a certain kind of way. You know, I'm going to tell you, you don't have to suffer. But you don't believe me. You know, where suffering's not a requirement, it just happens to be a reality. Shit don't work. Nothing works here. Pleasure doesn't last. Pain shows up. We don't get what we want. We get what we don't want. You know, what a drag, you know? That's the way it is. Big deal, right? It's not like that's news, you know? But when we touch the fire, that's when we want to get our hands out. The rest of the time we're kind of happy to cruise around and be, you know, life is so nice. And then you step into the hole, you know, and you're, how do I get out of this? It's not until you're in the hole. So right now you need that, it seems like you need that to wake up, wake yourself up. It's not necessary really, because nothing's working at any point, ever, here, you know. Don't start me, but every breath you get closer to death. But we don't think about that till we're dead, then it's too late to think about it. So we're not dealing with reality every day, we're in our dreamland. So do a little practice every day. Don't try to make anything happen. Just a little bit, it won't hurt you. Little by little, you'll be more aware of what's going on every day in your life. And you won't need to be, you know, on the verge of nervous breakdown to get your shit together. Because that's just, you know, there was a great Lama who used to say, most people think that bliss is just a little less pain. That's not bliss is bliss. It's actually something. But for us, we'll take a little less pain. But that's not quite enough in the long run. But it's not necessary, it's not a requirement. Right now, you can sit down and whatever, but you don't until you're hurting too much. You don't have, it doesn't have to be that way, but, and you can, by being more aware of that process in you, it might change a little bit.
So awareness is going to change. Like, I feel like I'm really ready to change that as a method. It seems like I've got some attachment to that as a method for awakening, and it's also this association with love and pain as well, and like through pain I'll get to love.
You mean affection and pain?
Yeah, or like the distorted love.
Love is love. Love, you know, once I was very much in love with this woman, and I was telling Mr. Tuari, I told him everything, everything. And he just would know, okay, baby. So I told him all about this woman. He said, my boy. He said, love is what lasts 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. He said, relationships, business. Hey, do your business, he said, enjoy. But love, that's something else. And I hated it. It took me months to get over that. It was such a brutal reality check, you know. I hated it. Unfortunately, he was right, you know. Relationships are relationships. The very word means between two things or more, right? That's not love. Love is not between two things. Love is who we are already. But we don't see that. We don't experience that. Until we step into something and then we go, ow. And we want that to go away and we think, that's love. It's just a little less pain. So that's not bad. A little less pain is not a bad thing. I'll take it anytime. But we want more. It's not enough for most of us. We have that longing to really taste that love, to drink that love, to be in that love. That's the only quality that I have. The only qualification that I have is this disgustingly urgent longing to be in that love. And I just can't stand not to be in it. Sometimes. The rest of the time, we float around like an asshole. But sometimes I really want to be in that love. So then I sit down and sing. Or do something that deepens that place, you know? So it's all good. It's all good. I don't have the mic. Don't look at me. Give him 5 rupees. I'll give you the mic.
5.
You have it? Okay.
So you said that you wanted answers, so I wanted to go back to this question about invisibility. We were created by God in His image, some say. Like God expanded itself and one little part said, I'm Krishna Das. As you can see, I'm in the same boat as you with regard to invisibility.
Which means we're visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so this is a reminder for both of us to take our individuality, our individuality a little less seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And be more like God, who is largely invisible, as far as I can tell, although we see Him in many ways.
Thank you.
Hi, Christian Das. So my question is, I think, a little bit different, but I think all of us are here under
duress.
Yeah, under duress, and also as a Ram Dass retreat, right? And it's beautiful to hear from the satsang who was with him, who met Maharaji, and many of us didn't get that opportunity. But we've had the opportunity to meet you all, and especially Ram Dass. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what Ram Dass means to you. He's been a great friend and also someone who first brought the message of Maharaji to you. But in all these years of friendship and being in satsang together, what does Ram Dass mean to you?
Well, really, everything. It means everything to me. When I walked into the room where he was sitting the first time, without a word being spoken, without any eye contact, just walking into that room, I knew that whatever it was I was looking for was real. It was real. It existed. It was zero. It was existed in the world. It could be found. I didn't know what it was. I don't know what to call it. But it was here. It was in the world. So of course I became very attached to Ram Dass, and I spent the next year and a half hanging out with him, and he made it very clear to me that it wasn't him, that it was Maharaji essentially coming through him. And that's when I felt I needed to go see Maharaji. Because, you know, there's a lot of personality in those days, 50 years ago. And he didn't want us hanging around. You know, he loved us as long as we kept our distance. And he loved on the soul level, there was total love. But on a personal level, there was always stuff going around. And that became apparent that what was coming through him was Maharaji. But how could you know, for me, it was a completely life-changing moment when I met him. And we've been stuck with each other for 50 years. 50 years, long time. Yeah. So much love. And more than that, it's funny, certainly at first, the way we saw Maharaji, how we experienced him, had a lot to do with the way that Ramdas had talked to us about Maharaji. And then we saw him, you know, through Ramdas's eyes at first, very strongly, which was great. But then I learned very clearly Ramdas was sent back to America, visa was up. And Ramesh Das went back, Raghu, a lot of people went back, and Maharaji kept me in India. He actually got my visa made for me. And when Ramdas always kept like a respectful distance in a way from Maharaji. Not just respectful, but also he saw him in such a such a huge presence, so to speak, that he kind of liked to be a little further away to see the whole picture in a way and feel it. So we all sat on the other side of the courtyard with Ramdas, right? So then, after everybody had left and I found myself in Kenchi with Maharaji again, he was sitting on the tucket and I was sitting on the other side of the courtyard. And I kind of looked around and there was nobody here with me. I was alone on the other side of the courtyard. And the Indians were around with Maharaji over there, and I thought, and I kind of got up, kind of walked across the courtyard, sat down right by the tucket by Maharaji, and nothing happened. It was the beginning of it was a big moment for me. It was like the beginning of my own kind of, you know, Ramdas he's big presence, big mind, big awareness. I'm a little schlumpy guy. And I just wanted to be a little schlumpy me with little schlumpy Maharaji. And that's what happened. So I got my own Shlumpy Baba. And I got my, you know, it was like I got to do my own thing and be me. I didn't have to be Ramdas in that case. But coming to Maharaji through Ramdas was very powerful because one time he was sitting across the courtyard and Maharaji looked at him and he said, "Tell Ramdas, we understand each other perfectly." Something like that. It was a very beautiful moment. And so he has that vast, big space, you know, which is also Maharaji like that. But I just wanted to hold on to those feet. I didn't care about that stuff. I want that foot. And I got free enough in myself to do that at some point. You know, Maharaji, along with his money, he had to give his money to somebody else to buy him a ticket onto the bus to Kusi. He also had just bought a Volkswagen bus, which Maharaji said, you take the regular bus, you're a saint, you have to ride the bus. Give your keys to me. Give to Krishna. Krishnadas is the driver. Driver was actually my first name. Driver! And I drove the bus, and there were like 17 of us in that bus. People hanging off the back, lying on top, hanging out the doors, and we drive down to Kenchi, and people would come out of the houses to watch us, you know. It was like, whoa, the circus is in town, you know. So then Maharaji broke the bus, and then we had to take, it didn't work anymore, so we had to take the regular bus. It was causing too much problems. And so Ramdas took it up to Almora, lugged it up there by truck, because there was a Volkswagen repair place with real German people in India. Wow. Couldn't fix it. Then I had to take the bus, the Volkswagen bus. Me and Balaram, we hired a truck, put the bus on the back of the truck, and rode through the night to the hills to Delhi. We get to the Delhi border, and the truck stops. And they say, okay, that's it, that's as far as we can go. Excuse me? What do you mean? Oh, we don't have a permit to go into Delhi. Why didn't you say something like, 14 hours ago? Because they wouldn't have got paid, that's why. So we had to take that bus off of one truck. It's in India, you have no idea. And then get it on another truck to go into Delhi. So we stopped at one place in Ghaziabad, and I forget exactly how it happened, but we were at a gas station, and we're talking to the owner, and he's saying, what are you doing? Well, we're taking it into Delhi to try to get it fixed. He said, and this little grease monkey kid climbed into the bus and touched one wire under the dashboard, and the thing started. Maharaji wanted that bus gone, so he just killed it. And now it was in Delhi, and that was the story. It stayed there. Still there. But it's all because around, the way the story looks on that level is very clear, around us. He could not talk about Maharaji. Maharaji said, don't talk about me. So he talked about him all the time. But he never said his name or where to find him. He figured that was safe. It wasn't. Was it? Here we are, right? All of us. And he's just sitting there like he's doing nothing. So. Yeah. Who knows why and how and all this works, who we are to each other, one life after another life. It's just, but there's no way, you can't thank somebody for being themselves, right? Ramdas did what he had to do, which was to share that Maharaji with people. He had to. He couldn't not do it. And we are all beneficiaries in that right now. None of us would be here. Or it might be a Christian gospel singing meeting, retreat. You never know. Or a Sufi retreat or something else, or a Buddhist meditation class. You? Give her a mic before she bursts over here. Okay, him and then her.
Were you a musician before you went to India?
Am I a musician now?
Yes.
I don't think so. I played a little guitar and I moaned and groaned a little bit in English. But I was too neurotic to get anything together, you know. It never happened. So, was there another part to your question? Or was it, yeah. Music was always big for me, for sure. But as far as doing anything really publicly, I don't think that would have ever happened. I just was a schmuck. I just couldn't get anything together. It was a disaster. Okay, give her the mic, please. No, we got a minute. Give her the mic, please. I don't want any, can't take responsibility for what's going to happen here if she doesn't get a mic.
Okay, so I had a question, 3 questions, I guess. How do you, but you don't have to answer them.
Okay, goodbye. You got the mic, that's it. What?
Okay, great. So I guess, how do you have the courage to speak your truth?
First of all, I don't know the truth. I speak whatever I
Okay, courage.
feel.
Courage.
I can't not do it, so it doesn't take courage. I'm not, what would I be afraid of in this case? It's all family, we're all hanging out together. There's nothing at stake. Already the government knows everything about me. I don't have to lose. Where's courage needed? It's just love, hanging out with friends, family. Really.
Okay. And then how do you practice self-love?
I'll let you know someday when I figure it out. You know that story that the great musician who getting interviewed for a newspaper, and she says, the woman says, the reporter says, so what was your greatest musical moment? And he says, hasn't happened yet. It's kind of like that. Hasn't happened yet. I'll let you know if you want to know.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Third question.
Like if someone you have to interact with regularly causes you a lot of suffering, how do you deal with it?
If somebody you interact with causes you suffering,
Yeah.
you give them a microphone. Sometimes I like myself. There's self-love, right? That's the answer to your second question. Goodbye, see you later. I don't know. What kind of suffering? Somebody does something actually to hurt you, or it's just not giving you what you want? There's a difference. Actively trying to hurt you? Well, if somebody is actively trying to hurt you in some way, emotionally, mentally, or something, at some point, basically you do whatever you have to do to protect yourself without causing more suffering. Because if you react with anger, you just pushed the wave and now it's going to come back twice as hard. So what happens over time and through practice, and it just happens naturally as a result of practice and a result of being more aware of your own stuff. When somebody comes at you with negativity, you can easily, it just happens that you see that they're only coming towards you with their own pain, out of their own pain. And you're not even really the target, even though it looks like that. Even though they might think you're the target. That's their problem. But when you recognize, you see a person's motivation, you see it's coming out of their own pain, and actually that's naturally compassion will arise. Because at that point in your development, you're at a place where you don't necessarily feel you need to protect yourself. from anything, because what can hurt you? That's pretty far along, but that's what happens. And when the father of one new monk came to Buddha and was really pissed off that his son had become a monk, and now who's going to help him on the farm, and blah, 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 blah. He's really angry. And the Buddha said, old man, if someone brings you a present and you don't accept it, where does the present stay? He said, well, with the person who's bringing it. He said, and so I leave your anger with you. Right? Because also if you get affected by that, if you take it in, and then it starts your proliferation of thoughts, then who's burning? That person's happy. He screwed you up, but now you're burning. So you don't want to burn. But through practice and through really, the ripening process, we don't take everything so personally all the time. It's such a relief. The burden of being ourselves gets lighter and lighter. So. Okay. Thank you so much for hanging out, and